As a dismissive avoidant and a therapist, I wanted to make this video about our fear of intimacy, discussing with you why it's so hard for us to consider intimacy, to go beyond superficial level when we date someone or even interactions with people. And I think if you're dating someone avoidant or you want to get back with someone avoidant, it's important for you to know also those limitations, because by understanding your partner's psychology, you'll be able to communicate with them more effectively, to also use what I call pragmatic empathy to create a secure bond with them.
igetmyexback.com. Everyone deserves a second chance.
The roots of early attachment, which is the case for any type of attachment, it takes its roots from our childhood. And the thing is, avoidant kids, they have an experience of neglect, but not necessarily neglect or abusive, could also and mostly emotionally unavailable. So parents who are working very hard when their kids are upset, they assume that they can't get any form of support to soothe them. And so that teaches them to be self-reliant. Play on your own, play in your room. I'm busy cooking, I'm busy doing things. Play Lego in your room, okay? And I'll be with you in a second. Typical kind of a framework. And so that develops the belief that if I express my need, if I need something from my parents, well, they're not going to answer. They're not going to provide any sort of support, and I'm going to be disappointed. So basically, I'd rather just rely on myself. So this is the construct of people who are avoidant. Again, there are more specificities to that, but this is basically more or less this idea. And I want you to visualize that little boy, that little girl, on her own, in his or her bedroom, figuring out, like, I can't rely on my parents. It's not that they neglect them, they abuse them, it's just they're not available. And so I need to do things on my own. So I will learn to play on my own, for example. I used to play a lot on my own, Lego, for instance. And those experiences will define some key traits. The first one is they value independence. And so for people who are avoidant, independence is equal safety. Independence is my safe space. It's where, when I have a problem, I can rely on myself. Because and the other way is, if I'm too intimate with someone, if I depend on someone, if someone depends on me, then that's a threat to my autonomy, right? And so very often we refer avoidant as islands. They like to be on their islands. So it's very important for you to understand that this element of closeness is overwhelming because it removes that sense of self, right? When I'm spending time with you, when you depend on me, when you need something, that prevents me from doing anything that I want. I want to do whatever I want. I'm independent and I choose what I do. And so that's why they would prioritize that self-sufficiency. And the problem is, of course, when you're self-sufficient, when you're an island, you can't connect with people. And that creates a lot of tension. And when you grow up, when you start having relationships, this is where, from my experience, this is where you start feeling like, okay, hold on, there's something wrong. I have girlfriends, I have partners, but in a way it's hard for me, and I understand that they need something that I can provide, some depth. This collaboration element is hard for me, and I need to learn about it. And by the way, I forgot to mention that there's a guide somewhere in the description called Dating an Avoidant. If you want to learn more about avoidance, whether you're avoidant or you're dating someone avoidant, have a look. It's in the description, it's totally free. Another element is the fear of vulnerability. And for dismissive avoidant, I'm smiling because it's so much me. When you don't want to show your weakness. You don't want to be vulnerable, because if I show my weakness, in a way, I'm not perfect. And the relationship that we have with parents is that we want to make our parents proud. And we, in a way, have some sort of imposter syndrome. If people know me for who I am, they're going to be disappointed. And so if I open up and if I tell them my wounds, my fears, I'm not going to be as strong as I want people to see. And this is why it's hard for avoidant to develop intimacy, because how do you develop intimacy? is about showing your true self. It's about opening up. It's about discussing about your wounds, your fears, your insecurities. That's how you understand people. That's how you connect with people. If we are stay on the surface level, on the sort of the Instagram version of our lives, we don't connect with people. And we can have thousands of friends, but we don't necessarily have true connection. And so this is why there's always a barrier, always keeping their partners at an arm's length because of the vulnerability element. Another very important trait is the emotional element. We refer dismissive avoidant as dismissive avoidant because they dismiss emotion. So in a way, they haven't learned about their emotions. They don't necessarily understand their emotions. They maybe know, I'm happy, I'm sad, and that's the only range of emotions that they know. And so when it comes again to building intimacy with someone, it's about, okay, how can I understand your emotional sort of signals and cues? How can I soothe you? How can I have a discussion about those things, about how you feel? Because in a way, we've been taught that it's a waste of time to feel sad, to be unhappy. Like, what's the point? You're sad, start being happy. That's how, in a way. Again, I'm laughing because it's so much me. And so when we feel this kind of those emotions, we feel like it's bad, right? Because it prevents me from being, again, my perfect image, the Instagram sort of image. If I'm sad, if I'm crying, and I don't allow myself being that vulnerable. And so because I've been taught this, it's hard also for me to read those emotional cues. Because my parents were cold and distant, hugging was not necessarily something that we do. And so when you start dating someone who has more emotional intelligence, it's hard for us to connect and to speak the same language. And so avoidants, they use avoidance as a defense mechanism. They avoid things, they put people away to protect themselves from traumas or micro traumas. And so that fear of intimacy will lead them to feel engulfed, losing their identity. I need to know, I need to be myself, and also repeating those hurts. In the past, anytime I open up, anytime I was doing something to connect with someone, they would push me back. And that's why they often use deactivation strategies. So in attachment theory, we all need to be attached to someone. People who are anxious and secure, they activate their attachment style. Anxious people, they overactivate this attachment style. And avoidants, they basically suppress this natural need. They deactivate their attachment style. And some of the strategies is about withdrawing, focusing on imperfections, etc., etc. There's plenty more. Have a look in the guide. I didn't want to overload this slide deck. And they're doing it to prevent closeness. So if I focus very strongly on your imperfections, on the fact that you make a lot of noise when you eat salad, then it's going to be very easy for me to say, okay, she's not right for me because she's noisy when she eats salad. This is not a true example, but this, I think a lot of people feel like, oh yeah, she's but, and they give you a very stupid, silly excuse that will sort of reinforce this idea that like they're not right for me. And there's also an impact on the society as a whole, because we, in a way, as a society nowadays, we value independence, we value strength. As I refer to the Instagram image, we are very strong, we are independent, etc., and so on. And the problem is that as we value those things, for someone who's avoidant, it's going to be very hard for them to challenge this. Because in the workplace, they will be doing their work. They'll be independent, they'll get on with things. But then when you translate this in relationship, this is hard. And again, as they have this, expectations, I need to be like this. I need to present myself like that. And actually, society would reward me at work. I would be rewarded. People who are avoidant usually are very hard workers. They like to be, dedicating a lot of hours working because they have a sense of control. Usually they do something that they're good at. And so that could be their zone of genius. But when it comes to relationship, it's harder. And they struggle between this societal approval and our human need for connection. So at work, they'll feel in their zone. And when they go back home, they feel like, oh, my partner wants to be emotional. They want to discuss things. They want me to open up. Well, in the workplace, people don't ask me about that. They just ask me what I've done, and, my deliverables and stuff, and my pipeline and my clients, etc. And we don't have to talk about emotions. We don't need to talk about vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Actually, it's the other way around. I'm strong. I'm the best performer, right? I'm independent. If you give me something, I'll do it. Okay, and so there's usually a clash, and that's why people sometimes avoidant, they are fluent in the business world, and they're not necessarily very good with the love languages in relationships. So how do we overcome this fear of intimacy? First of all, you need to recognize, you need to understand that those fears, the same way I understood when I started to be in a relationship and having kids, that there's something unusual. There's something unhealthy about those patterns, about this idea of deactivating. So seeking therapy is obviously the normal way to understand and to work on yourself and with your partner. So don't use your partner, if you're an avoidant, as a therapist, but use your partner as a confidant. Test things. Take the leap of faith, opening up about a problem, about a secret, about something. I used to be very secretive. I'm still a bit secretive, but not that much. And so it's very important for you to open up with your partner and take the leap of faith. In a way, if you care about them, if they care about you, if you love them, there's no risk whatsoever. And challenge yourself to, approach things a little bit step by step. And this is how you will build intimacy with your partner. Baby steps, progression, trust, opening up, effective communication. This is how you overcome those fear of intimacy. So yes, it's tricky to date someone avoidant. It's tricky to be avoidant, and it's complex. Yes, it's seated in our fears and our past experiences, our childhood. But in a way, the work that I do with my clients is mostly focusing on the future. So maybe we do one session talking about your past, talking about your history, your parents, etc. But once you understand a little bit those triggers, those stories, it's really about, okay, what do we do now to challenge those things? What do we do now to change our habits? What do we do now in terms of communicating our needs, our fears, etc. So there's an element of understanding and awareness about our emotions. So it's about how can we be more in tune with our emotion. And then it's about, okay, how can I express myself in the context of a relationship, opening up. It's in a way they have to be taught intimacy, what it is to be intimate. I don't know, I've never been taught how to be intimate. So it's something that you can do with a therapist, myself, whoever finds someone. CBT does help a lot. You can do attachment therapy in that case, but for avoidance, it's very kind of straightforward. It's really more about doing than reflecting. And understand that if you're dating someone secure or anxious, they're on your side. If they love you, there's no risk. If you are dating someone avoidant, assess whether this person is willing to do the work. Because if they are feeling, okay, this is the way I am, and I don't want to do any work on myself because I feel, at work, people don't complain. At home, nobody complains because I behave the same way I behave as a kid. So I'm fine with that. And the relationship is too complicated, and relationships are too complicated, and that's not what I want. Then you are wasting your time. Don't stay with that person. Find someone more secure, or find someone who's avoidant but who's willing to do the work. And again, if you want to learn more about how to date an avoidant, the non-nonsense of dating avoidant guide is in the description. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.